Is it ready to go?
Right.
It's ready to go now?
Yeah, and the record button is on the lower part of the option bar. Can you see it?
Yeah, I see it. So I should just go ahead and hit it?
Yeah, hit it and then record on this computer.
Huh?
Record on this computer.
Is there another thing that says that?
That's it?
I just hit record.
Yeah, just hit record.
Okay. So now we're connected?
Yeah.
It's happening? What about the people? I can turn them on as well? Trying to figure out the technology.
Now it's working. We hear you loud and clear. It's good.
Okay, good. I get so confused by all this mess. It's a monsoon raging outside. Anyway, good to see you. Namaskar. Happy you're back. Okay. So basically, we're going to do our refuge, etc. And then I'll explain a few things as well. But we'll start with that. Refuge. And then before doing the Heart Sutra. Our motivation should be, since this is a Mahayana teaching, that by whatever we learn, whatever we contribute, anything that arises, any insight that rises within us from hearing the words of the Buddha, may it serve as a cause for our awakening. Because only when we're awake or more awake will we be effective in benefiting all beings, including ourselves. Now, basically, that is, I'm in the wrong thing. In Tibetan, it's Sangye, Chodan Soki Chonan Hua, Changchu Badu Dani Kyab Suchi, Dage Jin Soki Pe Sonam Ki, Drola Penshir Sangye Drupa Sho, Sangye, Chodan Soki Chonan Hua, Changchu Badu Dani Kyab Suchi, Dage Jin Soki Pe Sonam Ki, Drola Penshir Sangye Drupa Sho. So now remember yesterday when we went through the different, again, the four seals. And so the Dharma, in essence, the Dharma is those four seals. Emptiness, impermanence, etc. And Buddha generally is translated as awake. It literally means awake. But in Tibetan, Sangye, this prayer, Sangye is the word for Buddha. Sang is one who has completely purified all that needs to be purified, completed all the purifications, and Ge is one who's completed all of the practices, all of the realizations, purification and attainment of all of the merit. I hate the word merit, but all the spiritual accumulations complete. And then the four immeasurable thoughts. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness, which is exactly love, Maitri. Exactly the definition of love is that. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. And the definition of compassion, may all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. And it's so important we don't just say, may all beings be happy, may all beings be free of suffering. But we say the causes, because we want it to be sustainably. We want all beings to be the causes sustainably free from suffering. And also, as we understand the cause of sufferings, we're going to go straight in that today, try to do the whole path in less than an hour, the Four Noble Truths, the causes of suffering. And the more we understand what the causes of suffering are, karma and klesha, the more that prayer has power, because we understand exactly what it means and we're trying to cultivate it. May all beings be inseparable from bliss without sorrow, and may all beings abide in a state of equanimity, free of the extremes of attachment and aversion, host of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Lord was composed in the concentration on the course of dharmas called profound illumination. At that time also, the noble Lord Avalokita, the bodhisattva and mahasattva, in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, looked down their own being. So, it is not spoken by the Buddha. Represents the individual vehicle, and Avalokiteshvara, of course, represents the Mahayana. So he's speaking through them. And this is where this is clear. At that time also, because it says he was in the course of Dharma, it's called, at that time also the noble Lord Avalokita, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, in the practice of the profound perfection, looked down. He held but 5 skandhas, 5 heaps, are 5 parts of being, and in their own being were empty. So then through the inspiration of the Buddha, he's inspiring Shariputra to ask the question. He's being set up. Said to the noble Lord Avalokita, the Bodhisattva and Mahasattva, how should any son of a good family train who wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? And this is very interesting also. He says, how should any son of a good family train? A son of a good family is the son of the family of bodhisattvas. It's a name for bodhisattvas. And he says the son. And then the next one is not corrected later to be politically correct. It's from the words of the original text. The senior monk says, any son of a good family, and Avalokiteshvara says, any son or daughter of a good family who wishes to engage in the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it thus. He or she beholds the 5 skandhas and that in their own being are empty. That's not added in to be politically correct and include the women. Avalokiteshvara from the beginning included all the women. It's the senior monk who just mentions any son of a good family. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Emptiness does not differ from form, and form does not differ from emptiness. Likewise, feelings, recognition, volitions, and consciousness are empty. So, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness, lacking differentiating marks. They are not produced or stopped, not defiled and not immaculate, not deficient and not complete. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no volition, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visible form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tangible. No mental object, no I element, etc., up to no mind element and no mental consciousness element. No ignorance and no extinction of ignorance, etc., up to no aging and death. Likewise, there is no, these are the 4 noble truths. There is no origin of suffering, no suffering, origin of suffering, cessation or path, no wisdom, knowledge, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, because relying on action without the fear, I won't going through worldly dharmas. We're afraid we're going to get what we don't want and we're not going to get what we want. And so until we realize shunyata right here, until the bodhisattva realized there's no attainment and no non-attainment. There's no attainment in Buddhahood, there's no non-attainment either. Not from its own side. Of course there's attainment in Buddhahood, of course there is. And at that point, he overcomes all fear, he or she. All Buddhas existing in the 3 times, relying on the perfection of wisdom, fully awakened to the highest perfect enlightenment. Therefore, one should know that the mantra of the Prajnaparamita is the mantra of great knowledge. The highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which allays all suffering, the truth, since it has nothing wrong. The mantra of the Prajnaparamita is proclaimed, Tayata, Gate gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Together maybe. Gate gate, parabhagate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Gate gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. Gone, gone beyond, completely gone to the other shore. Bodhi, enlightenment, svaha, so be it. In this way, Shariputra, should a bodhisattva and a mahasattva train in the profound perfection on wisdom. Then the Lord rose from that concentration and commended the noble Lord Avalokita, the bodhisattva and mahasattva, saying, well done, O son of a good family, so it is, O son of a good family, so it is. Just as you have taught, should the profound perfection of wisdom be practiced. And all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Lord had uttered this, the elder Shariputra, the noble Lord Avalokita, the bodhisattva and mahasattva, and all the people present, including the devas, human beings, asuras, and gandharvas, were delighted and applauded the Lord's speech. This completes the Arya Bhagavati, Prajnaparamita Ridya Sutram. Okay, so today we have to go through the whole entirely graduated path to enlightenment, the three paths, to have as a basis for the next part of the teaching, which is Introduction to Tantra. It's Mahayana path and Tantra. But before one even mentions Tantra, before one can discuss it, the qualifications for studying, entering in any level into Tantra is experience in the three principal paths. That of renunciation, which means to emerge, renunciation of suffering, renunciation of suffering, the altruistic motivation of bodhicitta, working for all beings. We have to have those. There's no way to engage in Tantra, because Tantra is Mahayana. There's no way of understanding the Tantra without having some idea of shunyata. If we start thinking all these deities, Tara, and everybody's self-existent, it doesn't work at all psychologically. So it's very, very important. So, but that's why we're screaming through so quickly. There should have been a whole course taught for these preliminaries. But today especially, we're going to go through the Lamrim prayer from the I think you have copies, from the Lama Chopa, which even the beginning part of the Lamrim, the lower scope, by practicing it will bring the result of having a higher birth. And then the middle scope is through realizing shunyata, which is basically the individual vehicle. The result is being free from samsara, becoming an arhat, and the higher scope is the bodhisattva path, through which it's the emptiness combined with the altruistic wish to be enlightened for all beings. So with those two, so we're to go. Worshipful root of all well-being, may you gladly care for me, inspire me thus. It's mentioned in
Sorry, everyone, we just lost you.
Okay.
Okay, there you are. Good.
We're back again.
Yes, please go.
Do I have to, so they can see me also?
You were breaking up at the end, so if you can recap.
No, I realized that. Yes, I was doing my YouTube last night, and yesterday's talk popped up, and the first part of it was completely not there. It was scattered, whatever. Right now, with the heaviest monsoon rains, it's a miracle that the broadband even works here. Anyway, so what we were saying is the guru is the root of the path. And as I mentioned at that time, this is the basis of the Lamrim. And the reason it's in the Lam Rim especially, de facto, they're taken into the practice.
Jimmy, we're losing you again. Give me 1 sec. I'll be right back.
Is it there and again?
Yeah, we have you back.
Okay, was that all missed before?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, but yes, we were breaking
Okay.
up completely. Yeah.
Well, sometimes even when the Dalai Lama, he doesn't bother to teach gurus the root of the path when he's teaching, not the great Lam Rim, but a short Lam Rim, like Essence of Refined Gold. And it's a lot of Westerners because it's too much for people. Because there's so much around the guru and bogey yogis and things, guru, to every word they say is perfect, etc., etc. It's too much, you know. And so he'll often leave it out. And sometimes he says, the Tibetan people will say, the Dalai Lama does not understand the Lama Rim, he'll say, because I'm leaving out the guru part because some people will bounce off of it. But since the Lama Rim is a system of going through the path in order to practice Tantra, and we're doing this, so tomorrow and the next day we can introduce Tantra, it's very important we have the 3 principles of the path, and it'll be extensively talking about the guru at that point. So this point we'll leave it, and we'll go on to the next step. The next one, it's so quick, it goes through the whole lower scope. Let me realize how this opportune, fortunate rebirth, rare and found but once, is quickly lost. Then undistracted by the meaningless works of this life, seize its meaningful essence, inspire me thus. Here we have 2 important parts. 2 important parts of the gallery view. Yeah. 2 important parts. You have the precious human rebirth and death, all in one verse, instead of going through lots of verses about that. The skillful way, so of course, the precious human rebirth. As I was telling people in the last course, every course you do, every Dharma course, every Lam Rim course, they talk about how rare is the precious human rebirth. Rare by number, rare by creating the cause, etc., etc. And so we hear it and we hear it and we hear it. Almost, it seems like the preciousness loses something because we hear it so many times and we get, oh, here comes the precious human rebirth again. Here comes the story about the tortoise, which comes up every 100 years, and that's how rare to get a human rebirth, and how it comes up once every 100 years and puts through the golden hoop, and that's how rare to get a perfect human rebirth. And we get complacent about the Dharma. And then as I was telling them, when I was teaching here at Tushita in the old days, in the 90s, we'd have about 25 people in a course, and at the end of every course, we could go down and sit with His Holiness on the floor and ask questions. And so the one course I went down with my group, and the woman asked, what do we do about depression? And the mind is my department. And so birth with all these conditions. In Tibetan, precious daljor, it means leisure and endowments. Leisure means the time to practice, and endowments means having all the different conditions, physically, mentally, etc. And when all those conditions come together, you realize how precious your life is. And also, he said, if you realize that your true nature, you have Buddha nature. Your fundamental nature is purity. All of the crap, everything else is on top of that. They're all adventitious stains on top of the pure mind of Buddha nature. We all have that. And if we realize that we have full pure being within us, and we have a perfect opportunity to cultivate it and get to that pure being, how could we ever be depressed? It's like, wow, it came alive, the whole topic again. Oh yeah, we should never we're so rich. We're so rich what we have. Just look at the rest of it. And one of the ways you meditate on it, you look at the people who are suffering in Africa, poor people that are suffering in America. The two suffering places, Africa, America. Anyway, so that's the precious human rebirth. And right away, the skillfulness of the Lamrim prayer, what comes after. If you get the realization, wow, what I have is so precious. I have a precious human rebirth. I have everything I need to practice. Everything I need to cultivate, I have. But the next one is death. Death is definite. Its time is indefinite. What helps at the time of the death? Having practiced. So practice now. That's the idea. You've got a precious human rebirth, but its time is indefinite. You don't know how many heartbeats you have left. Boom, 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 boom. Maybe a few. Nobody thinks they're going to die today when they die. And so it's so important. Death meditation is so important. Lama Yeshe used to say you need a death injection every day to wake you up. Even when you're starting to go to sleep in your Vipassana retreat or whatever, you meditate on death for a second and think, I could be dead tomorrow. And then you wake up. I want to cultivate today. I want to take into the what helps life. Practice. What helps. So very, very important meditation. Death is not to be morbid at all. And in every tradition it's that way, There's reminders of death. So then let me see. And then afraid of the blazing fire of ill destiny suffering, let me take heartfelt refuge in the three jewels and fervently strive to avoid evil and accomplish all the collection of virtue. So here you have huge amount also. You have what comes after death, then one contemplates on the lower realms. And harming others. If we do, we're creating the cost to get a human. And then from that comes the refuge. We don't want to go to the lower realms. We don't want to be born as an animal, a ghost, etc. So we take refuge in the three jewels. That becomes a motivation. I've always had a little trouble with that, even though it's that way in all the different Chinese tradition, my Chinese Buddhist friends. It's kind of like carrot and the stick. I prefer the carrot. I prefer I'm taking refuge because I want to practice Dharma rather than because I'm afraid of the hells, But I guess we need both. You're reminded that you could slip back easily into it, and most births are not human births, as we know how we've meditated how rare and precious it is. So immediately we understand that. And so the next one is taking refuge. And then after that, there's about karma. And fervently strive to avoid evil and accomplish all the collections of virtue. Well, we're going to discuss karma in depth today. The main topic is going to be dharma, because after we get to the middle scope, we're going to do the Four Noble Truths, which comes in the middle scope. So at this point, the karma is usually the morality of performing positive actions and not negative, and purifying the negative. But more of that will come today. So we're not going to go into the topic of karma at this point, but we're going to come into it about 20 minutes from now, if we have 20 minutes. So then we're moving into the middle scope. Practicing the practices of the middle scope can only at best give us a better birth. That's it. And then it says, as we go into the middle scope, it says, well, maybe that's not good enough, just a better birth. Frantically tossed by waves of defilements and karma, tormented by the many sea monsters of the three sufferings, from this dread, boundless great ocean of becoming, let a strong wish for freedom grow in me. Inspire me thus. Inspire me, bless me to be able to want to be free completely, not just a better birth, not good enough a better birth. Better birth is no guarantee for the next life, Things will happen. That we want to be liberated completely. And then training to attain liberation. This samsara, like an unbearable prison, I see as a charming garden. Rejecting this view, let me keep the 3 trainings, the store of the Arya's treasures, and grasp liberation's banner, inspire me thus. So the whole middle scope is done in those 2 verses. And then everything else is upper scope. Because it's a lam rim glance prayer for people who, just to go through quickly and take us up to the tantric, where we go more into the Mahayana topics. But it's a nice thing to practice every day if you read through that and just touch on those points. I use it as an outline more than teaching I don't use it as an outline when I'm teaching a full course, when we're going into all the different details of the lam rim. But when we do them, most of the things I like to do is lead retreats in Tara and Chenrezig. And so one of the sessions we go through this prayer and we explain every single, like we're doing now basically, explain the different ones. And then there's a skillful way of, with the lam rim, you've heard the explanation, so every day you read through the whole thing and then you stop on one and go in more depth, go more depth into depth, more depth into this. And that way you go through the whole lam rim every day. Quickly in 10 minutes with the whole path, and then maybe spend an extra 10 minutes or 5 minutes on one of the topics. Very powerful way of practicing everything in context. So now we're going into the middle scope. So instead of going into the middle scope at this point, the main teachings of the middle scope are 2. One is the 4 Noble Truths, the Buddha's first teaching, and the other one is the 12 links of dependent origination, which I won't touch on today. Following the 12 links of dependent origination is following a throwing karma from ignorance through all of this, going through all the different stages up to freedom, basically. So we're going to go through the noble truths, the 4 noble truths, and awfully quickly. It's quite a topic. I hope a lot of you are familiar with them, but if not, we'll just have to do more courses to go through the whole lam rim. As I said, this is abbreviated because the course is Introduction to Tantra, and without having understanding of those 3 principles of the path, we shouldn't even be engaging in an introduction to Tantra particularly. So, the noble truth of suffering. Oh, this is one everybody hates. Oh, we're talking about suffering. These Buddhists, they just talk about suffering. That's all they suck. One of the things, suffering is a bad translation. It's dukkha. It's dukkha in Sanskrit, dukkha. And so, everything, suffering. Dukkha, which they translate as suffering not very accurately, is a little hard to translate. So the opposite of dukkha is sukha, which means sometimes translated as great bliss or happiness. But really what it means, at ease, completely. The opposite of the suffering is being completely relaxed, completely cool, completely at ease. No anxiety, no fear, no nothing. Like bam, which is a much better description of the state than just being blissful. And so then that what means, what dukkha really means is dis-ease, or being totally at ease, comfortable. I mean, not comfortable. Everything is, we're not comfortable. Dukkha goes everything from suffering, the heaviest types of suffering, which we'll go through, to just having anxiety, just the existential angst, things that come up. Everything just never is quite right, or when it does, it changes. We're not free yet. So that's one. But we're going to go through the classic, and we don't meditate on this to be depressed. We meditate on it because this is the problem. A lot of times there's an epithet for the Buddha, is like the physician. So our problem is dukkha. Dukkha, suffering, whatever, that's our problem. And so we have to admit that that's the problem. We have to go through all the different aspects of life that are difficult and problematic and recognize that that's our condition. And then the next one is the cause, which is going to be karma and klesha. When we go first, we're going to go through the sufferings, and then the causes, which is karma and affliction. And then we recognize that the root affliction is ignorance. Overcome ignorance, we're free of suffering, the whole path. All those other things get cleared up. But at first, we contemplate very deeply on these things. So, and basically it's kind of like we're in a burning house. We get complacent, we're in a burning house and we die. Like the first stage of the lam rim, we should recognize that the problem's there and not go into denial about it and then do something about it. But in the classic Sutra of the Four Noble Truths, the first four that were given by the Buddhas: birth, old age, sickness, and death. Birth, old age, sickness, and death. Birth is suffering, old age is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is suffering. And as I always say, it's people ask, how can you say birth is suffering? Birth is a nice time, the baby's coming, we're all getting ready for the baby, we make a special room with frilly curtains and baby, But actually, they say that the reason you can't remember back, you go back to this life and you try to keep remembering, because past life is just memory. If you had a memory that was so strong, one-pointed concentration is really just the close placement of memory, it's called. And if you have samadhi, close placement of memory, you can go back and remember your past lives. But there's a block for most of us at the time of birth because it's traumatic. It's traumatic coming into this world. And so even sometimes for the mother, it's really, it can be painful to the degree that they say a male couldn't even stand that much suffering, what a woman goes through, to get this little hole being stretched by this big head over time. And so the Buddha says, what's it like when you're the baby being pushed through this hole with this soft tissue? It's like, it's traumatic. It's a very traumatic event. And then Lama Yeshe, they don't do this anymore, but in the earlier times, they would take a baby and they're coming in an operating theater with these bright lights, welcome to the world, slap. And Lama Yeshe says, I assure you, no Tibetan child was ever slapped coming in. And people say they don't do it anymore. But that's the way they used to do it. They'd hold them up and slap them, get the welcome to the world. You can't say that's a pretty traumatic event, birth, for the poor child. So birth is considered traumatic, and so birth, old age, sickness. And also, birth is the cause of dying, basically. Birth is coming back into samsara again. Birth, old age, sickness, and death. As we know from the story of the Buddha, I told the story of the Buddha in our last course, when the Bodhisattva, when Siddhartha, when he was in the palace of the worldly life, it was predicted by the astrologers that two possibilities. He would be a Chakravartin, which is like a world emperor, like emperor of the whole world, like Ashoka, Genghis Khan, whoever, the big time emperor, and or a Buddha, fully enlightened being. And so when Dad, the king of this little kingdom, he wanted his son to be the emperor of the world, not go out wandering around like an ascetic wearing rags. No way. I want my son to be instead of the king of Shaka, to be king of the universe. Yeah, that was his ambition. So how are we going to do that? We're going to hide any kind of suffering from this kid. We're going to surround him with no mention of death, no problems. Everything's going to be cushy, cushy, cushy all the time. And so in the classic story, after a while, there's an event where the Buddha saw that things weren't quite right. Siddhartha did at this point. And so he went out to the four gates. He went out to the eastern gate. And then nighttime, he snuck out with his charioteer, the only friend he was really allowed to have, because otherwise he would see suffering. And he saw someone who was a very old age. And Siddhartha was shocked. He asked, "What's the problem with that guy?" And he says, he's old. Everybody's going to get old. Everybody gets old. And the way of putting this in this story is so powerful. It's like, everybody's going to get like that? How can people relax if that's what's going to happen to them? Doesn't anybody want to do anything about it? And then the next night he went out to the southern gate, and there was somebody who was ravaged with sickness. And what's wrong with that person? Well, they're sick. Everybody gets sick at one point. And then the next night he went out in the western direction and snuck out and looked, and there was somebody dead on a palanquin. What's that? He asked his friend. They're dead. Everybody dies. And so Siddhartha's going, everybody dies. Everybody gets sick, old, and dies. I don't understand how people can not want to think about anything else until can we do something about that or not? That's the whole point, And then the fourth night he went out in the northern direction, and there was a sadhu dressed in rags, a wandering mendicant who looked happy. He looked very skinny. He's wandering along begging. And he says, what's with that guy? He says he's left the worldly life. He wants to find out the meaning of old age, sickness, and death. He wants to find out the meaning of life and practice meditation because he knows that only happiness can come from inside. And that's not just the property of Buddhists. And so that set his mind. And then eventually there's the whole story about how he left the palace, etc. So he wanted to overcome old age, sickness, death. So he was very disturbed about this, Siddhartha. And the father was always doing everything to keep everything fine, and so he wouldn't see any problems. And at one point he was so disturbed, Siddhartha, by these four things, Dad came up and says, son, what's the matter? You look disturbed. He says, I'll give you anything you want, I'll give it to you. And he says, okay, Dad, I want no old age, sickness, and death. For you, Mom, all the people in my kingdom, me, my wife, my child, no old age, sickness, and death. So the father went, the king went, uh-oh, he's waking up to the prediction of becoming an awakened being and leaving home. So those are the first four that are given in the classical sutra: old age, sickness, and death. Death is, as I said, death is definite. It's a tough one. People they want to go in denial about death. We go into it a lot. There's a beautiful story from the Pali Sutras, and it's called the parable of the mustard seed. And a woman had her baby died. She had a little child, her only little son, first baby. And she's wandering around, and maybe she doesn't even have a family anymore. The child died, and she can't accept it. She's going crazy that this child has died. I can't take it. And so she's going around everybody going, my child's died, my child wants to do something. Can anybody do anything? Can anybody do anything to save and bring back this child? She doesn't even accept that it's dead, you know? And so one person who was kind said, everybody else was going, this woman's crazy. So one person said, well, nearby is Shakyamuni. He's supposed to be a great guru. He's a great one. So if anybody can do this, it'll be him. Go ask him to save your child. So she goes and she enters, there's right up to the front, you know, come up, and she puts her child down and said, please save my baby. And the Buddha says, okay, okay, but I need some special ingredients to do the puja, you know. They all believe like this in the Hindu village too. Get the right puja and it'll all be taken care of. I need some special ingredients. I need some mustard seeds from a household where nobody's ever died. And so she goes out, knocking on doors or whatever the equivalent is. She goes all through the village and all through, and asks if there's anybody died in that household because she needs to get mustard seed from them. And she goes to all of them, and they go, oh no, my uncle, they go on about their horrible stories about how someone died in the family, the child, the mutilate, on and on and on. And so by doing that, she gets it. Finally, she goes to all these houses and goes, everybody dies, you know. And she goes back to the Buddha, and a skillful way of teaching. Isn't it just amazing, the Buddha? You know? He could say, you know, stop crying about it, you're dead, face the facts, you know, but no, he says, no, lets her learn that by going in her real experience, by asking to try to find these mustard seeds. So then they went together and they buried or burned the child, the Buddha and Lord Buddha and that. So we'll fast go through some of the other. So the next classic of the eight are meeting the end is separation from what we desire. Meeting the undesirable, the suffering of not finding what we seek, like success, etc., and then the suffering of having a body, which is like a magnet for suffering. So the next one is worse than death, separation from what we desire. That's the worst, isn't it? The worst. Every song, every poem, every opera, everything is about that one. My baby left me. I'm separated from what I desire. That's the big one. That's the big one. I always like to go, the blues is just a cold gray day, and all night long it stays that way. The blues is a one-way ticket from your love to nowhere. The blues is a black crepe veil ready to wear. Perfect. That's Duke Ellington, not the Buddha, you know. Yeah, separation from what we desire is a big one. It's the theme of all literature and art, isn't it? It's a tough one. Some people would rather die than go through it, and so that's a big one. Meeting the undesirable, it's self-explanatory. All of a sudden, you run into a horrible situation, and you don't like to accept that. And then the suffering of not finding what we seek. We want success, we want fame, we want to win the big game, etc., etc. And then the suffering of not having a body, which is a magnet for suffering. It just happens all the time. So those are the first 8 in the classic ones, and we don't have time to go into all of them, but they're kind of self-explanatory, the other ones there. There's plenty of stories you can tell with each of them, not getting what you want, the suffering of not getting what you want. And then there's 6 that are in the lives of all beings. Those are mostly humans. And the uncertainty, nothing is stable. Nothing is unchanging. We go from upper realms to lower realms. In life, we can't find any real stability. We want to stabilize things. And like we said at the beginning yesterday, we all seek for things outside. We want something outside of us. We want a relationship. We want a computer. We want to find happiness outside. But the nature of outside, the nature of outer phenomena is it's impermanent. It's changing all the time. And the more we attach ourselves to outer things, they're impermanent. And when they change, the more we grasp, the more we suffer when they change. It's just exactly the basic Buddhism, isn't it? And then also all the things that depend on that we labeled that they're happiness and not. And then the third one is that all afflicted minds lead to suffering, which we're going to go right into very clearly here. The next cause of suffering is going to be that. And we're going to have to go through that kind of more or less quickly. And then, so I won't go through all of them. Everything is not stable, and greed, always wanting more. It's like salt. The market crashes, the team loses, the first one, nothing stable. And having to abandon the body repeatedly, lack of friends at death, etc. Endless births, endless births. There used to be one guy here who was an Indian man. He was a brilliant scholar, and he became a monk with the Dalai Lama, and he spent his whole life studying. Before that, before he became a monk, he went to high school, he went to undergraduate, he went to graduate, got his doctorate in physics at Columbia. He studied all of his life. And so the main motivation he had that he didn't want to get born again because he didn't want to go to school again in the future life. I don't want to go to school anymore. I've got to be free from samsara so I don't have to do that shit again. No more school. Whatever motivation we can find, to try to, we don't want to be born again. And seeing it again and again, the same dramas again and again. Like in the story of the Buddha, he had one point of concentration, the 3 watches of the night. He's under the Bodhi tree, getting enlightenment. He already had one point of concentration, which he got with the first gurus that took him through all the stages of one point of concentration. All the different, they're called all the jhanas in the Pali tradition, the 8 form and the 8 formless, and they're called the dhyanas in the Mahayana tradition. Merely by attaining samadhi, merely by attaining all of those one point of concentrations, all of the powers come, all of the spiritual powers, being able to control the elements. One of them is being able to look and see all your past lives. But they're not enlightened. People think they're enlightened when they have these powers. So that's why they're a little bit of a trap also. Can be, because anybody who gets them, they're going to think, I know more than anybody around me, including my guru. So, but in the first watch of the night, and I find it so inspiring in the story of the Buddha, he looked back at beginningless countless lives of being born and dying and going through all the dramas of each life, going to school, having children, separating, again, sick, this and this, all the war, all the things again and again and again, born, going through life after life after life. And he saw this endless being born and dying. And when he saw that whole stream of going through this endlessly, he had a true perspective on it. But when we're identified with the dramas of a particular life, then it's like such a big deal. It's like, oh, this has happened, like being left. It goes so strong. But in his case, he saw all that, and I find when I hear that, it's like, yeah, it gives inspiration. If one can see that it's going to go through that again and again and again. And our gurus, the Lama, one time when the object of desire was lost. You know, all the pain and the blues I was going through that. And you go see the guru, you go see the Lama, and he goes, "What do you expect from samsara, you fool? You know? What do you expect?" He says, "In countless lives you've made love to that woman. In countless lives you've been to Goa. In countless lives you've done this over and over and over again." And they have that perspective, and they just kind of go, "Oh my God." And the lamas, some of the greatest, most learned lamas, masters, they said that more than 95% of people come with them with their relationship problems, you know, not their direct problems. "Lama, my baby left me. Lama, help me. What practice can I do?" Yeah, it's funny. And they go, "I don't know. I'm a Himalayan yogi from the monk. I never had a relationship." But somehow they have to learn. Anyway, those are going through some of the classic sufferings. And then there's a division of three there's the division of suffering, or dukkha of dukkha, which is like we all understand it as suffering, like breaking your leg or feeling tremendous pain or getting sick or going through one of these great traumas. We know it's suffering. And then the next one is suffering of change. That's the one that says we grasp at something and it changes. And then so it turns to suffering. And a classic example of that is that we're suffering from the cold and we go out and lie in the sun for a while and we think, and then we start getting burned, and then it gets too hot, and then we go back inside. It's a classic example. We think that standing in the sun is the cause of happiness, but it's not. It changes to suffering because we have this body. It's just a microcosm of what's going on. And the last one is the third one is just the fact that we have these five skandhas, the fact that we have this psychophysical system that we have. We're going to have it. We have all these little nerve endings. We're going to have it all the time. We sit and retreat for a long time. Our leg starts to hurt. Yeah, but we're going to, just the fact that we have a body, it's going to happen in our lifetime. And the fact that we live our life and get involved with people, we're going to have the others. So basically, I could go through this a lot more, of course, but we've got to just keep moving because we'll never get to the cause of suffering. And trying to see if there's any of these examples, which I always like to give stories, the real stories that are from life. But anyway, we're always trying to hide it. We're always trying to go in denial about suffering. And as mentioned at the beginning, the main thing is to recognize it. The reason we meditate on all these is so we can recognize them. But on the other hand, the physician, the Buddha, sees that we can also be our own physician, that the diagnosis is their suffering. But the prognosis is it's possible to end suffering because the suffering is an impermanent phenomena. It's changing all the time. And another synonym for impermanent phenomena is cause and its effect and functioning thing. So there has to be a cause. There's suffering, there has to be a cause. And the Buddha saw in the third watch of the night, the cause of suffering is karma and klesha. Karma and afflictive emotions. Afflictive emotions will move. He works backwards. Karma. This is a suffering you go through all the time in India here, your internet, your fire wire that you just pay for.
The suffering of internet change.
The suffering of internet change. It used to be at Tushita, they couldn't even have phone lines anymore because the monkeys tore down the lines and then everything went wireless. You know?
We've come a long way.
We've come a long way, oh yeah. And then we think, wow, now we've got it. Now we've got it very cheap. We've got this all the time. Also, when we have it on our phone, so if we can't do it for stuff like this, you can always shift to your phone and I have to get it on my phone. So anyway, the cause of suffering, karma and klesha going backwards. And karma isn't some mystical term. It just means action. It just means that, action. So there's a cause. So then the Buddha, he saw what those causes are, karma and affliction. So we go through a little bit with karma. So some of the characteristics of karma. First, we'll talk about how for a karma to do something. It brings us, there's some interesting topics here about free will that I put on the side, and certain examples where there has to be something like karma. It couldn't be anything else with certain happens. It's just impossible otherwise. The probabilities are too great. So we'll go through some of the different types of karma. So first, for a karma to be complete, you have four things. You have an object, and you have an intention, you have an object, you have an action, and a completion of the action. And mostly when we go through karma, we give the negative examples. So say I'm sitting here, and there's this watch. Say it's not my watch. Say it's somebody else's watch. It's Tushita's watch. They lend it to me. And I've been sitting here teaching, and I'm going, I think I want this watch. I teach here. They should give it to me. I deserve it. And so you think you've got the object, and you've got the intention. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to nick this watch. And then there's finally the action. Putting the watch in here. I don't know if they can still see me or not.
Yes, we can.
You can see me nicking the watch? Okay, I have to press a button though so I can see it as well.
Yeah,
My picture is, oh, here it is right
for
there.
the gallery one. Yeah.
And yeah. So anyway, it's not coming up when I click on it. Is it because it says mute?
No, it should be on the right top corner.
Right top corner of the enter full screen. And then click it. No, it's not doing it. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But then I'm not seeing them. So anyway, so that's an example of stealing. There has to be an object and intention. And karma is intention. It's almost the same thing as attention, 99.99% of karma is intention. No intention, you don't make the karma. If you don't intend to harm somebody, if you don't intend to, if it's an accident, it's kind of like the law in a way. If there's an inadvertent action that causes some harm, there wasn't any intention, so there really isn't much there. So there's the action, intention, and those are the four. Object, action, intention, and completion of the act. And the completion of the act doesn't come until I think, now I've got it, it's mine. Before that, I'm just borrowing it, And I tell you, Dharma people are the worst people on the planet Earth because they know this. You lend them a book, and they keep it forever. I never intended to keep it. I'm just borrowing it, And I remember leaving the monastery. I wanted my bucks back, and you're getting so uptight because I didn't intend to steal it. I was just borrowing it. So if it's not, it's complete when you think, now it's mine. Those things are made. Those things have to be there. And so there's some characteristics of karma. Definite, it's expandable, no cause, no result. Definite means when there's a karmic, it will bring a result, If there's the action of karma, it puts an imprint on the mind. And so there's something that's going to happen, and it's definite. Once you've done the whole, all the things are there, it's going to happen. And then expandable, that's not so nice. This is scary. If you do something negative, the result that it's going to be keeps expanding. From some little action that you did that's minor, pretty soon it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, that action. And it's the same with something positive. You do something positive, that nice event, it becomes more and more, it expands. The result of karma expands until it's stopped, until you purified it. It's like it's like a radio wave. If you drop on a placid water, you drop a little stone, that's your karmic imprint on your mind, and then it's spreading out and going. Karma is action of body, speech, and mind, but karma is also the imprint of an action on your mind. It's called the karmic imprint. So we do something like I stole the watch, and the imprint of that goes on the mind. That's karma. And the action of doing it is also karma. And then expandable, no cause, no result. If you don't create the cause, you can't get the result. Not possible. And sometimes there's little proofs in life about this that are very strange. Somebody falls out of a 20-story window and they don't die. The wind, something happens and they land on a snowdrift. This happens sometimes and it gets in the paper. That means that they didn't create the cost to die at that particular time. When I was in high school, I used to ski. Everything was about skiing, ski racing in the winter. I lived for the winter in some ways. And people would go up skiing, and there was 5 people that I knew of. They weren't close friends, in a Volkswagen Bug. And it went off the cliff. It went off the cliff and down the cliff. And 4 of them were killed, and 1 of them didn't have a scratch. And the one that didn't have a scratch wasn't even sitting in the middle back. It was sitting in the side. And it's like, no, why is that? And you'd say, oh, it's some incredible coincidence. Why? I don't know. But from a karma point of view, you'd say that person didn't create the cost to die in that car at that time. The cause wasn't there. And you see it in wartime all the time where some people didn't create the cause to die. Did any of you ever watch Apocalypse Now, one of the greatest films of all time? When he's standing there, and there's a dialogue by this guy, Michael Hare, about talking this stuff about somebody doesn't have the karma to die, they can't be killed. It's like, it's just no matter how much you shoot at them, it's like, these things would happen in war. And it's like, yeah, from karma point of view, say, yeah, they didn't pay the karma to die in other circumstances. It's very interesting. Karma is a hidden phenomena. We can't see it. We can't prove it, Emptiness, which is the most important thing, which we want to go away from today, having come a decent understanding of from today and yesterday. It's easy to prove in a way. It's hard to realize. It's a simple syllogism. Everything that exists, nothing exists independently because everything that exists is a relativity. Everything that exists is a relativity, therefore it cannot be independent. It's not possible. They preclude each other. So that's it. That's the whole thing right there. There's no independent I. There's no separate self. There's the emptiness of what? Emptiness of a separate self. Anyway, we'll do a little more at the end with that before we go today. But we went through that a lot yesterday. So, so some different categories of karma. There's things like the different effects. There's called the fully ripening effect, and that means we created something, we did something negative. We're all going by the negative now. It all goes to the positive also, but some of the negative is the time when we talk about karma more. Say we do a negative action, and the fully ripening effect would be to get a lower birth, not get a human birth. And then there's the action similar to the cause, which is we have the habit. Say stealing. I stole the watch. So stealing watch, the full karmic imprint, if it was complete, stole something valuable, stole something from my guru's Dharma Center. Wow. If you're going to steal something, don't do it here. But anyway, what was I going to say? There's the one effect similar to the cause. And in a way, that's the worst one because we have a tendency to steal. And in your next life, we're always stealing things all the time. It's an imprint from child. Even as a child, one child will be stealing things all the time, and the other child would never steal anything. One child is just an angel, and the other one's always killing the animals, et cetera, et cetera. They would say because it's karma from before. And so one of the worst aspects of the karma is the habit of having it repeat again. You've done it in this life. The full result is a lower realm, but if you keep doing it in the next life, then you're constantly making the similar negativity again, because the habit, karma is just a habit. It's just a habit on the mind, isn't it? It's just a simple thing. Habit of doing things positive, habit of doing things negative. And then another aspect is the aspect of the effect similar to the cause. Say if you kill, oh, well, stick with stealing. The effect similar to the cause is not that you have the habit to steal, but you're always going to be stolen from everything. You lose things all the time. I think I must have been horrible because I lose things all the time. All the time. Maybe not as bad as when I, but anyway, or if you if it's for killing, you might have a short life, a very, very short life. Even then the doctors say there's not really a cause that they can find for somebody's death. They died young. They can't really find a reason, so they'll put some other general reason up there. Now they just put COVID because they get more funding from it to raise the death count. You know, we got to raise the death count on the COVID so we can scare people more, and so more funds come. So yeah, those are different ones, and then there's different things like karma. It's definitely expandable, no cause, no result. And there's different heaviness by nature. Now the nature of killing is much worse than there's the 10 immoral actions, 3 of body, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. There's the 3 mental ones, malice, wrong views. I think of the 3rd one. And there's 4 of speech: lying, slandering, harsh words, and gossip. So of all the 10 immoralities, according to that, gossip's really minor by comparison. It's not heavy. But they say it's bad because you do it all the time and waste everybody's time. And that's why it's heavy. But it's not really heavy in itself. It's a little bit of gossip. But killing is, and killing with all those other full events are there. It's a heavier action. And so then, and then the intention, if it's done with anger as opposed to doing it with some kind of other reason, lesser reason. And then there's a basis. It's worse karma to kill Mother Teresa or a great being than it is to kill an ant, you know, the different basis, different animal, etc. So there's all these different degrees, which we kind of make sense to us in a sense, its way, like that. They would even make sense if people didn't understand karma. But karma is a hidden phenomena. Only Buddha, fully awakened Buddha, can see all the implications of karma. But on the other hand, the most important things in the Dharma are shunyata. And then even the next ones that we don't see, but we can learn from inference, some other kind of experience. So anyway, karma is the one everyone wants to know about, and so they say, prove it, prove it, prove it, but we can't prove it very easily. We can't prove it, you know. It's hidden. So by the way of knowing things, I mentioned yesterday, when you study in the monastery, where I studied, is like, there's epistemology, basically, very direct perception, very few of the things we know from direct perception. There's more by inference, because where there's smoke, there's fire. And almost everything we know, we take on faith. And we're not talking about religious things. We take the existence of Australia, as I mentioned yesterday, we take all of the different aspects of things that's supposedly proven by science. We also take on faith. So when we understand those ways of knowing, then we understand that the things that we cannot know directly, we take it on faith because of the source of the information. We observe the Dalai Lama for a long time. He has great integrity, and the things that he says might be true because we can't know for ourselves. And there's other ones. Why would anybody lie about Australia? But there's other areas. So a lot of what we do, we take that way. But people only want to apply that to religion. Oh, I'm not going to take this karma and stuff as true. So someone like the Dalai Lama will discuss it, and you can maybe think, well, maybe there's a possibility that it's true because he's never lied about anything else. And plus, it makes sense. One of my favorite examples of something couldn't happen any other than karma. It's just the probabilities are too rare. A friend of mine was a monk in the monastery in Nalanda, and his father was a wild man. But when his father was a young kid living in the East Coast, Connecticut or someplace, I can't remember. When he's a little kid, there's these footbridges that go across the motorway. Not freeways back then, but it's 2 lanes either direction. And these are ones where you can actually pull off. It's not a fence like a motorway. So it's just going 2 directions. And so people can cross. There's a footbridge as well as auto bridges, but this is a footbridge. And so the father of my friend Paul, he goes on the bridge like every this little boy drops a rock and smashes the window of a car below. And this car pulls over to the side and chases this kid, chases him. He's running to get away from this man, and he's running. And the man captures him, and takes him back to his mom and said, and he's screaming, yelling. And so, wow, he's pretty pissed off. The kid dropped the rock and took him back to his mom. He wanted to find out what's, to stop this. So anyway, this is a true story. 200 miles away, 2 years later, where they live, there's another road, another bridge. He goes out on the bridge, he drops a rock and hits a car, and it's the same guy. The same guy chases him off to the side. It's like, no, the guy just went, this isn't happening, And so did the kid, I'm sure. So that doesn't prove karma. There's just some events that are just so improbable that there must be a connection somehow. There's huge things, coincidences. Just, you can say everything's a coincidence, but somehow it even makes sense sometimes where someone will be killed, someone won't, different circumstances. But it's a hidden phenomena, the karma. So it's one we accept because of it's taught by the Buddha, and it seems to work out more or less, and then we have to improve. So anyway, we have to move on. So one of the things that's very, very important is how do we purify a negative karma with all these results? Since karma is mostly intention, the main thing that purifies intention is regretting that intention, sincere regret. If you sincerely regret something that you did, sincerely regret it, then that is the main factor for purifying that karma. If it really goes deep, your regret, apply to that thing. And then the other aspects of karma, for purification, there's reliance, you're relying on the 3 jewels. There's the regret, and then there's the remedial action. We can do something like say a million Om Mani Padme Hums, or do something very, very positive, start feeding people, helping people. We dedicate that action towards the purification of that karma. And then the one for completion, the completion of the act, you promise not to do it again. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to do that anymore. So those are the 4 things that purify karma. The main one's regret. And as we know, if we learn from karma, as soon as something happens, try to purify it right away. One of the main things for practice is when we go at nighttime at the end of the day, anything that we've done negatively, we should try to purify it. We should try to make it pure at that time so it doesn't keep expanding. So those are the ways of purifying karma. And any karma can be purified. Even the heaviest thing can be purified. Which is kind of hopeful, isn't it? In the Pali tradition, they say that there's killing your mother, killing your father, wounding an arhat, killing an arhat, wounding a bodhisattva. You can't purify that. They're just too big. But in the Mahayana, it says you can purify everything. When you get into the Tantra, you can do it with Vajrasattva. You're working at deep level to purify those imprints. So, working with disturbing emotions. The karma is the immediate action that creates the suffering. But the cause of the suffering before that is the disturbing emotions, disturbing attitudes. There's klesha. Klesha has so many translations: disturbing emotions, disturbing attitudes. There's so many for these. It's like aversion, hatred, aversion, attachment. The main ones are those two. And then from those come pride, jealousy, all the other ones come from attachment and aversion. Main one comes from attachment, but the root delusion is ignorance. Ignorance. The root of samsara is ignorance. It's not the ignorance of not knowing something, it's the ignorance of misknowing reality. It comes back to this thing with shunyata. Everything that appears to us appears as if it's existing from its own side. And like when I was teaching on the Heart Sutra yesterday, the reason the Buddha gave a separate skandha to feeling and perceptions, that everything appears to us appears if it's coming from its own side, and immediately a feeling comes. Anything that appears to us, a feeling comes. We think that's nice or that's not nice. You know, it arises, or indifference. So the importance of that the Buddha put that in there, is that he gave a whole entire skandha to those two things, and all the other 49 mental factors were lumped together under volitional formations. So ignorance says something appears, and it appears to us. So it appears as desirable or undesirable, that's feeling, and then there's what cuts in is the discrimination. I want this, I don't want that. And so what comes from this, then the attachment, I want that. Then the anger, aversion comes from, when we can't get what we want. So everything that appears, it appears as something. In fact, the definition of anger is as something appearing to us. It appears as existent from its own side. It appears from its own side as being undesirable. Undesirable, very undesirable. It can be a person and whatever. And we want to harm it, we want to avoid it, or we want to kill it. So something appears that. So that's what happens that causes anger or aversion. And for attachment, something appears. It appears as existing from its own side, which is the fundamental wrong view, and then it appears as desirable. It appears as desirable. And so then we want that desirable, we don't want the undesirable, and so all of this with attachment, we do all these things to get more and more complicated, and it gets exaggerated and exaggerated. The object of attachment gets so exaggerated to finally it can be obsession. In the same way with aversion, it can be so much we want to kill this thing or person, because it builds up, it's out of control. And so these are the afflicted minds, and we won't go in at all to the ones that follow from that, which is pride and jealousy, etc. So that's what's happening in the process. So then these things are called disturbing emotions. There's so many translations for the word klesha: disturbing attitudes, disturbing emotions, delusions. So many that they have. And so basically, our Dharma practice for life, if we become a Buddhist, we practice the Dharma, the main thing is we want to realize the nature of reality, shunyata, so then these things don't appear anymore. These things, we realize that they still appear, in fact, We become free from that process. We become free from it. It'll appear, but it doesn't come to us anymore. It doesn't bother us anymore. So until we can realize shunyata, and we probably realize by now that might take many, many lifetimes and a lot of purification, a lot of merit, what we're doing is we're working with disturbing emotions. And whether we're a Buddhist or not, it helps to work with anger, it helps to work with pride, jealousy, and it helps to work with attachment, working with attachment. That becomes our whole path. And we try to purify to where eventually we can realize and be free from it all. But being free from it all can be a long, far away goal. In the meantime, we can help to be more happy because we're not disturbed by these afflictions. So in general, there's a couple of ways of working with with these disturbing emotions in general. One way is we don't want to be, as a middle way between suppressing them, suppressing anger or suppressing any other emotion, and the other one is acting them out. There's got to be a middle way in between. It's not healthy to suppress, and it's not healthy to act them out. There's some therapy schools where everybody wants to act out, they're screaming and yelling, want to act out all their anger. That just creates more. It just creates more like that. So that's totally ineffective. So working with the disturbing emotions, and so then some of the things like awareness when they arise. The more we can be aware, we can aware the disturbing emotion arises. And there's ways of even lessening that, the way we think about things. I'll give an example that's very, very, very important. We immediately identify with our anger when it comes up. We say, I am angry, I'm pissed off. Or we'll say, so that means it's the same way we use the verb is, I am Jimmy. I'm totally identified, I am Jimmy, and we use I am angry the same way. And it's really unskillful because immediately it doesn't put any space between ourselves and this anger, no time to deal with it. You know how you would say in Tibetan, I am angry? It's better to say, I have anger. I have anger in my mind. I seem to have a disturbance. But in other languages like Tibetan and Sanskrit, they would say lun sapujums, hot prana, hot subtle prana is arising in me. This is coming, this is coming, this is the anger. They'd see it right away, identify it, totally unidentified with it. Wow, that gives some space to work with it, doesn't it? I think it's coming up, I think anger's coming, the hot energy's there, it's there, it's there. And watching it and knowing that, okay, by that time you might be able to apply an antidote or even let it go. So one of the many amazing ways of working with that is not identifying with our delusions. In another way, it's not helpful to punish ourselves if we have anger, if we have attachment, if we have pride, if we have jealousy. Don't judge ourselves because we have them. Just take them as they come and work with them. Work with them, let them go. They're like waves, yeah? I'm so bad because I had a dirty thought. Oh, no, that doesn't help at all. That makes it worse. Or guilt. There's never any room for guilt because I did this. Not. The skillful way, and this whole process, there's no room for guilt. You did something, you see it was unskillful, you see it's causing yourself and others harm, so you regret that you did it and start the purification process. All these different ways of working with these. So our whole path is working with disturbing emotions. So we're going to have to just go. And there's all the reasons that we don't have time to go through right now. So instead of, I think anger in my mind that it's rising and not judgmenting. We've done that basically. And then some of the ways that if we understand karma, if we believe in karma, if we engender the idea of karma says that anything that happens to me, I created the cause in a past life. I created it. Wow. What a thought, you know. And even if we can't prove that to ourselves, what that means is when these things come up, we think, well, this is something that I did before. Now I'm suffering the consequence. And give ourselves some space. This is very useful, very important. Very, very useful way to live our lives into practice. No more victim. If you just believe in karma, just engender the law of karma, there's never you can be a victim again. Anything that happens, it's not coming because somebody did it to me. It's not something from outside. And it's the very first thing about grasping at the outside, and we think all our problems come from the outside, they all come from inside. That doesn't mean we don't remove obstacles that are outside. If somebody's raping someone or raping us or something's going on, we stop it. We stop it. And so it doesn't mean we all become, everything is holy, wonderful, and we allow people to walk all over us and other people. Not at all. It means that we recognize that when things happen, we created the cause and then start working on it. It gives a tremendous amount of space. But we don't do that. It's even us as Dharma practitioners, we blame things all the time. If this was better, if this was bad, if this person didn't say this or that, he said this, she said that, etc., etc., etc. We're constantly judging. Lama Yeshe, my guru, he used to say, I didn't bring my mala with me in my rosary. He said, we go through life judging. He's good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. She's good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. He's dead, good, bad, good. We're always saying the good, bad mantra all the time, exactly according to the Heart Sutra. Something appears, it appears as if it's existing from its own side, then it appears as either desirable or undesirable. So discrimination is saying that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad. And we're going through life saying the good, bad mantra. I want that, I don't want that, etc. Root of samsara, root of samsara. And the root of all of that is the ignorance that sees things existing from their own side. When that's uprooted, these things don't affect us anymore. They don't affect us anymore. This is the whole purpose of Shunyata. I'm not going to go into much more. We could go on a lot with this topic. And yeah, there's an important thing there. It's working with disturbing emotions. We need to learn how to do it, and then we create space in our minds. We don't react. Somebody calls me something, I don't react. I think my personal belief is that with karma, how is there any free everything you do is going to have cause, have cause, have cause, have cause, have cause. And it says my connection is unstable. Maybe it's just labeling me as being unstable. And putting the word out upstairs, and we're getting toward the end of this time before we go to questions. And we can continue this through our questions. Usually the most questions come up with karma and stuff.
Jimila, there won't be time for questions. We have to finish at 4:30, right?
Okay. So we just...
I've shared your email and your WhatsApp number with all the participants so they can...
okay, because I thought I forgot to mention. This time, because there's another course happening in half an hour, the next part, if I hope some of you come back for the actual introduction to Tantra, and at that time we'll have more time at the end to just continue. But meanwhile, please write, please tell me. So I wanted to finish that one thought, basically, that was this thing of free will. It's hard to find free will because everything we're going to find is conditioning on top of conditioning. So my view is that somehow, due to our conditioning, and we can improve ourselves, we can actually, even though it's going to be due to our karma, doing our learning, doing our perfect human rebirth, we can improve ourselves. We can practice working with these disturbing emotions, and we can generate more love, more compassion, etc. We can make that a habit. We can make the good habits of love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and lessen the bad habit of anger, aversion, attachment, etc. Gradually, we can do that, and you could say it's even karma that takes us to conditioning, that takes us to that place. Well, somehow karma brought us to the Dharma, one kind of Dharma or another, which teaches us how to do this. So we start doing it. That's also our karma. So as we do that, there's something that we can generate called awareness. We can do basic awareness. We can do pure awareness as a form of meditation. And even though it's our good karma that took us step to this place where we're meditating on pure awareness, the fact that we have that pure awareness, we're working on our awareness. When somebody does insult us, or there is somebody who comes at us angry, we cannot react. We can have, due to that awareness, we're not going to react. We're not going to buy into this when it comes up, which is a very important point. I think other than that, if it's all conditioning, it's absurd. I mean, it's completely, there's no freedom. Can't be any freedom there. But I think that's it. So fundamentally, the more we can generate awareness and Pablo saw this path, but all these things we do because we have a precious human rebirth. We've met the Dharma. We can cultivate these things. And the fact that we can cultivate them is also conditioning, but it can free us up. I can't believe it. Yeah, there's no way you're going to get through the whole path. There's a few more that we're going to come. We just have to do it tomorrow the beginning of the introduction to Tantra, quickly wind up the path of the Lamrim leading up to that. Please remember, tomorrow we start at 5 o'clock Indian time, so that's 2 hours later, because I know a lot of my friends that were watching before, they're coming from South America and they're coming from these places, and they have to get up at 3 in the morning. They came the first 2 days we gave of teaching at 5 here. And they get up at 3 in the morning, and even to come for 5 o'clock is quite dedicated. But it's nice, the ones that were students, they got online. You can still watch it. You can still watch it on the YouTube and stuff, though I watched the YouTube, it came up today, and it was very distorted by things coming up. But anyway, you can still watch it even without being here, but it's nice when you're here. I really appreciate you being here. Lots and lots and lots. Any virtue we've accumulated through going through these topics of the Lamrim, any virtue, may they serve as a cause for our awakening. For only when we are awake or more awake will we be effective in benefiting all beings, including ourselves. When we're just living in total delusion, we're not very effective in helping ourselves or anyone else. So we have to cultivate this path, more loving kindness, more, etc., etc., etc. One of the most important things we can cultivate, the main antidote to anger, is patience. Zopa. He got a good name, didn't he? He has to be patient with all of us. Zopa, feeds patience. And so, yeah, with the negative and positive mental factions, in a mind of anger, a mind of love cannot be. In a mind of love, anger cannot enter. No negative emotion can enter. When we have patience, no negative anger can arise. You can't have a negative and a positive in your mind at the same time. So we cultivate the positive and we eliminate the other and get more habituated. And one of the ways, if we start working on getting that first, is patience. Then when something comes up, when patience is in our mind, anger and these other delusions can't arise. Or when love's in our mind. So thank you. And please, I hope you're coming back tomorrow. But anyway, people should have, if for any reason, that you have my email and you have my phone, and my phone is my WhatsApp. And so, as I said, when I'm doing teachings, there's just too much more to do here. I never like, even if I have 10 days, I don't like to think that's the course, bye-bye. If we want to, if we wish, we can interact. We continue with the question and answer dialogue, and it goes 2 ways. I learn as much from you as you can learn from me. So that's open. I'm sitting here in the lockdown, more than happy to hear things from you and discuss them. Yeah, I have all this extra time to be locked down there when we're doing Dharma. Wow, that's just the only relief I get from some of the things I've been going through is that, being able to help others with some Dharma. So thanks again for everything. I hope to see you tomorrow. Do we click them on again for a second? Say goodbye?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
You click on the gallery view, and then
Upper right?
yeah, upper right part should be there.
Mute. Okay, gallery view, okay. Okay, thank you people for your patience. And I hope we see you tomorrow, and I hope we stay in touch. Anyway, it's really important. I don't know. Yeah, a lot of the reason there's less people today because there are people that for the last 2 days, they have to get up at some ridiculously early hour unless they're in the, and we kind of lost the West Coast people and the people from Uruguay and Brazil, my students, but hopefully they'll be coming to the next one. So see you tomorrow, and stay in touch either way. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.